The clock struck midnight, and the house was shrouded in an eerie silence. Emily, a young woman with a penchant for solitude, found herself alone in her ancestral home. The creaky wooden floors and flickering candlelight created an atmosphere that whispered of the past. Her parents were away for the weekend, leaving Emily to revel in the solitude of the old mansion. The antique clocks chimed in unison, marking the bewitching hour, 3 a.m. Emily, wrapped in a cozy blanket, sat in the dimly lit living room, engrossed in a book. As she delved into the mysterious pages, the air in the room grew colder. Emily dismissed it as a draft, but an unsettling feeling crept up her spine. She glanced around, half expecting to find a spectral presence watching her every move. Unnerved, she decided to shake off the unease and retire to her room. As she climbed the grand staircase, the shadows seemed to dance, casting eerie silhouettes on the walls. Emily hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Determined to dispel her irrational fears, she continued up the stairs. Entering her room, she closed the heavy door behind her. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, casting long shadows that played tricks on her imagination. Emily tried to focus on the comforting glow of her laptop as she settled into bed. Just as she began to drift into a restless sleep, a faint whisper echoed through the room. Emily's eyes snapped open, scanning the darkness. Another whisper, this time clearer, as if someone stood at the foot of her bed. "Emily!" Fear gripped her, paralyzing her body. The temperature plummeted, and the air became thick with an otherworldly presence. A cold breath brushed against her neck, and Emily felt the weight of invisible eyes watching her. Summoning the courage to investigate, she reached for her phone, using its feeble glow to navigate the room. The whispers grew louder, the voice hauntingly familiar. "Emily, why did you leave us?" Her hand trembled as she traced the voice to an old family portrait on the wall. The eyes in the painting seemed to follow her every move. It was a portrait of her great-grandparents, who had passed away years ago. The whispers intensified, weaving a tale of betrayal and anguish. As Emily stared at the portrait, the figures in the painting began to move, their faces contorted in sorrow. The room pulsated with an otherworldly energy, and Emily felt a presence beside her. She turned to find the ghostly figures of her ancestors standing by the bed, their eyes filled with longing. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as the apparitions spoke of a forgotten promise, a pact made by generations long past. They accused her of breaking the sacred bond that bound their spirits to the mansion. The whispers swirled around her, accusing and condemning. Desperation consumed Emily as she pleaded for forgiveness, her voice barely audible over the spectral cacophony. The room quaked with an unseen force, and the temperature dropped to an unbearable chill. In a desperate attempt to make amends, Emily promised to honor the forgotten pact, to restore the balance between the living and the dead. The ghostly figures retreated, their anguished whispers fading into the darkness. The room returned to its normal state, the temperature rising and the shadows receding. Emily was left alone, trembling and bewildered in the aftermath of her encounter with the supernatural. As the first light of dawn broke, Emily rose from her bed, haunted by the events of that fateful night. The house, once familiar and comforting, now held a lingering air of melancholy. She vowed to uncover the secrets of the forgotten pact and restore the harmony between the living and the dead. Little did she know, the spirits continued to watch, their ethereal eyes following her every move. The ancestral home, once a sanctuary, had become a realm where the veil between the living and the dead was forever thin. And as Emily embarked on her quest for redemption, the whispers of the past echoed through the corridors, a chilling reminder that some promises are bound to transcend the boundaries of time and space. Deep in the heart of the ancient woods, where the moonlight struggled to pierce through the thick canopy of branches, Emily found herself alone. She had ventured into the forest seeking solitude, an escape from the chaos of the outside world. Little did she know that the woods held secrets darker than the shadows that danced among the trees. As Emily walked deeper into the forest, the sounds of the outside world faded away, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the rustle of leaves under her cautious footsteps. The towering trees seemed to lean in, whispering secrets to each other, secrets that made Emily's skin crawl. A distant owl hooted, sending shivers down her spine. Emily quickened her pace, the darkness closing in around her like a suffocating cloak. The winding path seemed to twist and turn, leading her further into the heart of the unknown. Suddenly, the moon vanished behind a thick blanket of clouds, plunging the forest into absolute darkness. Emily fumbled for her flashlight, her trembling hands betraying her growing unease. The feeble beam of light barely penetrated the thick darkness, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance and contort with a life of their own. As Emily stumbled along the path, a distant sound echoed through the trees. It was a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her feet. Panic seized her heart, and she quickened her pace, her footsteps now echoing in the oppressive silence. The path ahead split into multiple forks, each one disappearing into the impenetrable blackness. Emily hesitated, her breath catching in her throat. A soft whisper brushed against her ear, too faint to discern words but carrying a malevolent tone that froze her in place. A cold wind swept through the trees, extinguishing Emily's flashlight. She stood in the enveloping darkness, paralyzed by fear. Shapes moved in the shadows, unseen eyes watched her every move. The growls grew louder, closing in from all directions. Desperation fueled Emily as she sprinted blindly through the woods, branches clawing at her face and thorns tearing at her clothes. The growls transformed into unearthly howls, chilling her to the bone. She could feel unseen eyes upon her, and the whispers grew into sinister laughter. In her frantic flight, Emily stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin hidden deep within the woods. With no other option, she pushed open the creaking door and stumbled inside, the air thick with the musty scent of decay. As the door groaned shut behind her, Emily found herself in utter darkness once again. But this time, the whispers were replaced by a haunting silence. Alone in the cabin, she couldn't shake the feeling that something else was in there with her, watching and waiting. The woods outside echoed with the howls and growls that had pursued her. Emily huddled in the corner of the cabin, the darkness pressing in on her, and the unsettling silence broken only by the faint, mocking laughter that seemed to reverberate through the ancient walls. The night stretched endlessly, and Emily clung to the dim hope that the first light of dawn would bring salvation. Yet, as the night wore on, the laughter persisted, growing louder and more malevolent until it merged with the haunting chorus of the unseen creatures in the woods. Alone, helpless, and surrounded by the unknown, Emily's desperate pleas for morning went unanswered as the forest claimed her as its own, its secrets veiled in darkness forever. In the heart of the countryside, where the asphalt yielded to gravel and the moon cast an eerie glow on the desolate landscape, there lay an infamous road known as Whispering Hollow. Legend had it that those who dared to traverse its winding path after sundown would encounter the supernatural. One fateful night, a lone traveler named Emily found herself on the outskirts of town, lost and low on fuel. Desperation forced her onto the dreaded Whispering Hollow. As she navigated the serpentine road, shadows danced in the periphery, and an unsettling silence enveloped her. Her headlights flickered, revealing gnarled trees that seemed to reach for her as if whispering malevolent secrets. The air grew colder with each passing mile, and Emily's anxiety intensified. Suddenly, the engine sputtered and died, leaving her stranded in the oppressive darkness. Emily, armed with only a dim flashlight, stepped out into the cold night. The road stretched before her like an abyss, and a distant howl echoed through the stillness. Ignoring the ominous signs, she popped the hood, hoping to diagnose the car trouble. In the silence, Emily heard an ethereal whisper, a voice that seemed to emanate from the very shadows around her. "Leave this place," it urged, sending shivers down her spine. She hesitated, fear gripping her like a vice. As she inspected the engine, a pale figure materialized in the distance. The ghostly specter glided toward her, its vacant eyes fixed upon Emily. Frozen in terror, she could only watch as the apparition drew nearer, revealing a face twisted in anguish. "Help me," the ghost pleaded, its voice a haunting blend of sorrow and desperation. Emily stumbled backward, her heart racing as the ghostly figure reached out with spectral hands. She could feel the chill of the afterlife as the apparition's fingers brushed against her skin. In a moment of sheer panic, Emily turned and ran, her footsteps echoing through the hollow. The ghost pursued, its tormented wails blending with the howling wind. As she sprinted through the night, the road seemed to elongate, stretching infinitely before her. Exhausted and breathless, Emily reached her car. With trembling hands, she fumbled with the keys and miraculously ignited the engine. The headlights illuminated the fading figure of the ghost, still reaching out for her. With a screech of tires on gravel, Emily sped away from the accursed whispering hollow. As the road disappeared behind her, Emily stole a glance in the rearview mirror. The ghost, now a distant silhouette, lingered at the edge of the darkness. The haunted road had exacted its toll on her sanity, leaving Emily to wonder if the encounter was a mere hallucination or a glimpse into the supernatural realm. Whispering Hollow remained, a stretch of road cursed by the echoes of lost souls, where the living and the dead intertwined under the watchful gaze of the moonlit night.